Okay, so thank you for the introduction. As you know, this is going to be all about building powerful habits, and we're going to talk. I'm going to go through actually what we're going to talk about in the session. So we are going to talk, as Alethea mentioned, about good and bad habits. I'm going to talk about my background and experience as a coach, what habits are, the benefits of cultivating good habits, the science behind habits, habits of highly successful people, and some ideas to get you started with your own if you'd like to implement some new ones. How to be resilient when life gets in the way, because as we all know, life doesn't run smoothly. And I've actually worked with a client this week who had this incredible morning routine set up, and things have happened with her over the last few months and it's all got fallen by the wayside. And it was really interesting how we talked about getting that back on track, and I'll use that example later on in this session because it was a really interesting reset actually. I'm going to share some recommendations for some books and podcasts, and we'll do those 2 exercises, which we won't do guided today. You can come back and do them. And if you're watching on the replay, you can obviously do them at your own pace. So, as mentioned, I have been a coach for a few years now. I've been a certified coach since 2021. I spent 10 years of my life working in the fashion industry, which was very different to what I do now. 4 years in a corporate role and almost 5 years now self-employed. So I've got a consultancy business, so I actually do work with organisations, project management, business support, but I also do coaching with organisations and individuals. And what's really, really important to me is helping people get clarity on what they want from life and work. Often when people come to me, they are feeling stuck, they're feeling overwhelmed, and they want to get clarity and just unpack what's going on to map out their next steps. And my approach with coaching is grounded in evaluating life as a whole, because our personal foundations are so important to our success at work. And this is just a quote that I love to share by an author who I love, and actually his book is one of the recommendations that I'm going to give you at the end of the session. James Clear, Success is the Product of Daily Habits, Not Once in a Lifetime Transformations. And I wonder if what we see on social media and just generally out there, you know, TikTok, all the content that we consume tells us, you know, you can do whatever you want, you can be this person, you can do this thing, but actually how are you going to do that? And it's really empowering. I led a goal setting session yesterday I've got a membership group, and it was all about deciding what we want to do and mapping out the path to make it happen. And those actions are really empowering, and it's really exciting when you map that out, because anyone can say, I want to have that thing, I want to do that thing in 6 months, but if you don't work out what you're going to do to get there, obviously it's not going to happen. So success is the product of daily habits. I really love that. So breaking this down really simply, what are habits and why do we need them? So we're all really familiar with the things that we just do without thinking about, the routines that we have, like cleaning our teeth in the morning, cleaning our teeth at night, having a shower whenever you do that, having your meals at set times if you do that. So automatic actions or patterns of behaviour that have been acquired through frequent repetition. Habits don't often need a lot of conscious thought or effort. You know, I sometimes think it's a bit like when you do a regular commute and you get in the car. And when I used to drive to work, I'd be like, I don't remember any of this journey, but I know I'm here. So that's kind of like a habit as well. And habits can be positive and negative, and we've all experienced those times when you feel like, you know, you've got a bad habit. Habits can provide a really crucial role in supporting and improving mental health. And I'm sure you're familiar with some of these as well. So structure, stability, reduction decision fatigue. And I actually love this one because you might have heard the fact about Steve Jobs wearing the same thing every day to reduce decision fatigue. So every day he wore a black turtleneck, blue jeans and New Balance trainers, which became his signature look. And it meant he spent far less time making decisions and more time and energy on the important things. And I don't know about you, but thinking about, especially when I used to go to work in an office, thinking about what to wear every day, you know, it's like you get out the night before, if you have to do it in the morning, then if something's not clean. Actually, if you are in that habit of wearing the same thing every day, it just frees up that headspace to have to think about it. I'm not suggesting you do that. So I'm not suggesting you become a robot, but it's a good example of how a really simple habit can set you up for success. So this is the first exercise, and like I said, we won't do that now, but I'll run through it. And and a bit about breaking unhelpful habits and why I've called them unhelpful habits. So I'm a lot about language. I talk to my clients a lot about the language that we use, and how the things that we say can put us in the mindset of scarcity or lack rather than an abundant mindset. For example, if someone says to me, I need to do this because I need the money, saying that it could have negative connotations depending on how you feel about money. But if you say, I'd like to bring this money into my life or into my business, that already feels a lot more abundant than saying, I need to do this. That can sometimes feel desperate for people. It can just not feel good. It can feel negative. So I prefer to say breaking unhelpful habits rather than saying breaking bad habits, because sometimes there can be shame depending on what the habit is. I've done this session, similar sessions a couple of times, and the things people talk about can be shame inducing for them. It can be things like smoking. I'm not going to mention some of the others, but just things that make people feel embarrassed. Or I think shame's a super unhelpful emotion for us anyway, but we do feel that from time to time. So that's why I think our language is really important. So I say we're going to break some unhelpful habits rather than some bad habits. So first of all, think about what that habit is, and why it's not serving you. So on a real basic level, it could be scrolling on your phone. It could be working through your lunch. It could be not moving enough during the day. It could be something to do with sugar or diet or smoking, anything like that. And just can make sure you're reframing continually and being kind, because unhelpful is obviously kinder. Think about how that habit's making you feel. Often when we're doing something, I can relate, as a lot of people have said on these sessions before, to the phone scrolling. It's so easy you're waiting to do something, or you've got a gap in the day, you scroll on your phone. When we actually think about how that makes us feel, I know when I do that, it doesn't make me feel good. It's really counterproductive. I'll be waiting for something and I'll just go pick up the phone, I'll scroll on Instagram. I know it doesn't make me feel good, and it's a habit. I've been in the habit before of picking up my phone to send a message to someone, and all of a sudden I'm on Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook and I'm scrolling, and I put the phone down and haven't done that thing that I picked up the phone to do. So I know that doesn't make me feel good. It doesn't make me feel productive. So whatever that habit is that's unhelpful, that's not serving you, how is it actually making you feel? And what would you do with your time if you weren't doing this, which is such a powerful one, because I've worked with clients before who have said to me that their sleep is bad, they're suffering with waking up in the morning feeling tired, and we chat about it, and sometimes they're on their phone for 90 minutes before bed. They get into bed at 9 o'clock ready to sleep, but they're scrolling until 10:30 or 11. Or they're watching TV and they're watching like a murder documentary, and they're watching like someone killing someone else. And actually, when you think about what you're doing before bed in those 90 minutes before you go to sleep, it's such an important time for the mind to rest, to unwind. We know the research about the blue light and the screens and everything. So thinking about, with that example, what would you do with 90 minutes of your day in the evening if you weren't scrolling on your phone or watching something which wasn't making you feel good or happy? It's a really valuable time to either sleep, read a book, listen to a podcast, do some stretching or some exercise or something to get you ready for sleep. So thinking about what you do with your time if you weren't doing it is really valuable, even if it's down to when you're making your coffee in the morning or waiting for the kettle to boil. That could be a time where you could be scrolling, or people sometimes talk about smoking or vaping or doing things that doesn't make them feel good. Okay, that's a time we'll talk about later in the session where you could add another helpful habit in. So think about what you would do if you weren't doing that habit at those times of the day, how you would feel if you didn't do it. So perhaps it would have an impact on your sleep, your energy, perhaps it would have an impact on your relationships. And a really important question when it comes to coaching, and something that we often ask our clients as coaches, what will you do next? It's quite a loaded question in a good way. What are your next steps going to be? It's up to you to decide what you're going to do with the information that you've got and the decisions that you have made that have led you to knowing that this unhelpful habit needs to be broken. So think about what you'll do next. The next thing I want to talk about is the science part behind habits. So there is a lot more to this. There is loads more I could talk about if you Google it, you will find loads more information about the science behind habits, but these are the most helpful ones that I thought would be the most interesting for the session. So the first one is reprogramming neural pathways. And when our habits are ingrained, this is what I find really interesting. While they're ingrained, the brain does remain plastic, which is such a strange term. Like I think of like my son's Play-Doh. You know, it's still something that you can change and adapt, and by modifying habits and practicing new ones, it is possible to reshape those. And you know, think about the habits that you just do without thinking, that are things that you have grown up doing, like I said, like cleaning your teeth, like having 3 meals a day, like the things that you just do without thinking. You have programmed your brain to know that those things happen. You can absolutely reprogram it to not continue doing the habits that aren't serving you and to start doing new ones. A really common question that people often ask me is how long it takes to form a habit. And I really think it depends on the person, your personality, how often you're doing the thing, whether you're doing it multiple times a day, once a week. You know, the more often you're doing it, I think the quicker it is likely to stick. But there is research that suggests that it can take anywhere from 18 to 254 days. I wonder whether a habit that takes 254 days is one that you're not doing that frequently. If you're doing something regularly during the day, perhaps it's more like 18 to 25 days, but it says an average of around 66 days. The dopamine hit, the hormone connection is a really interesting one, and I actually work with this hormone matrix with my clients often when I ask them to think about where they're getting those hormones from, the hit of those during the day or during the week, and what they're doing. But it's super interesting, this one. So for example, the use of like maybe establishing a gym routine. So for example, my cycling class, when I go to the gym, the dopamine hit is what comes when we experience that reward or the positive outcome. When I go to the gym and I've not been to my cycling class for a couple of weeks, I come out of that class, or even when I'm in it, I'm like, I want to come tomorrow. Why don't I do this every single day? This feels so good. And that's the dopamine hit, reinforcing the behavior and making you more likely to repeat it. The hard thing is often, I think, is because the dopamine just wears off afterwards. Obviously, we don't wander around in a constant state of, you know, high dopamine hormone running through our body. It's the kind of hormone that I sometimes think you just want to bottle, because when you're not feeling motivated to go, you've long forgotten that feeling, you know, that you felt in the moment, and it's actually quite hard to get that back. So that's why I think the more often you're doing something, the more often you have that hormone coursing through you, and that becomes easier to reinforce the habit. So we're going to talk about the habits of highly successful people. And I think this one, again, is, want to caveat it, because there's lots of articles and info and reels and content out there with these highly successful people who get up at 4 a.m. every day and start this amazing morning routine and do their exercising and their journaling and their breathing and their ice baths and their, you know, all of their juice cleanse and everything that they do before even like 5:30. And a lot of that just isn't possible for a lot of people. And usually just picking one small thing, doing it daily, is going to have a huge impact on your life. So I just want to start off by saying that do not feel like you need to become the 4 a.m. person that is doing everything before 6 a.m. and getting up super early. It can be any time in the day. It's got to be something that works for you and is actually going to benefit your life. So I also like the idea of taking a strategic approach to both the start of your day and the end of your day. So that example I gave about the end of our day is just as important, I think, if not more important, because I know that how we finish the day really impacts how we wake up in the morning as well. And I personally know when I've spent time on my phone until late, I wake up feeling so groggy. When I've spent time in the evening actually decompressing, not being on my phone past 9 o'clock, doing something relaxing, I either wake up early feeling good, or even if I wake up a bit later, I still feel great because I just don't feel groggy. So obviously I mentioned about Steve Jobs wearing the same thing every day to reduce his decision fatigue. That was obviously a habit of a highly successful person. I've read that Mark Zuckerberg does the same thing. And I got this list from lots of different sources, but they're all the same because they're focused on personal foundations. There's so much talk about burnout now, and I think there has been more since COVID. And I can't imagine that someone who is working 14, 16 hours every day on the verge of burnout is doing any of this, because they're not looking after themselves. You wouldn't have time to. So I really believe that to be successful in business, in work, in whatever we're doing in a professional capacity, it's so important to focus on our personal habits and our personal foundations. So habits can help you smooth out during the day. Alethea gave me this really great example, and actually you can probably articulate it better than I can, about imagining you're a ball of wool or even a scrunched up piece of paper at the start of the day, and doing things during the day that help you just unravel and smooth out during the day, so by the time you get to the evening you're actually ready to unwind and decompress, rather than going to bed feeling wound up and uptight. So quality sleep, I think, is a really important habit of successful people. The morning routines, the daily rituals, like I said, it doesn't have to be early morning. We're going to talk a bit about habit stacking in a moment, but it could be something that you even do around making your morning coffee, or when you go and buy your coffee, or when you're waiting for the kettle to boil. A focus on health and well-being. So I know it's cliche, but doing your steps every day, taking some exercise, being in nature is so restorative, and particularly I think since the pandemic, more and more people are actually talking about the importance of being in nature, being mindful, continuing to learn, reading, having good time management. That really is goes hand in hand with productivity, I think. Setting goals, so you know what you're working on, and like I said, having quality sleep. So I've got a few suggestions here about getting started with a new habit. If it's something that you want to think about doing, I've done this session in the past where people have gone, I've got an unhelpful habit, it's not working for me, but I actually don't know what I want to do. So it's just a bit of inspiration for you if you're thinking about trying something else to make you feel better, to help your productivity at work, just generally help you feel better day to day. Think about the goal for your habit. So what actually do you want the outcome to be? So perhaps it's to be more focused at work, perhaps it's just generally to feel happier, perhaps it's to feel more motivated, to feel more inspired, to make the most of your morning, to make the most of your evening. So I've listed some ideas here, and you may have some ideas of your own, but there's some really lovely ones here that you can pick from and start really small. So reading, people often set themselves a huge goal. Okay, I want my habit to be reading a chapter every day. It doesn't have to be a chapter. Start by reading 3 pages before you go to bed. If you're starting from nothing, just start with something really small. If we work from home, it's really easy to get sucked into being at your desk all day. I don't know whether you can relate to that, but I certainly can. When I've got work to do and I just sit here all day, and I get to the afternoon, I'm thinking I could have definitely taken a break at lunchtime, but actually it was easier just to sit here and keep on working. But my productivity really went downhill in the afternoon. Yeah, I know if I escape and go for a walk for half an hour, I'll come back feeling refreshed, but it's actually when you've got out of the habit of doing that, it's quite difficult to get back into it again. So thinking about what the goal is going to be, and that's an important part of coaching as well when we talk about creating habits, is setting the goal, bringing it to life, deciding actually what you want to achieve. So regular exercise, time blocking your day is a fantastic habit, and something that I see people have amazing results from when they are feeling stressed and their productivity is not good and they are not managing their time. Blocking out your day is super, super useful and a really great habit to start. Having a morning routine, like I mentioned, learning something new, spending less time on your phone, doing a daily or weekly brain dump. We have so much going on in our head. Set your Alexa, set your calendar, set your phone, whatever, on a Sunday night or a Monday morning or a Wednesday. Alexa, stop. I just said her name and now she's trying to talk to me. So just doing a brain dump. What's going on? You know, what's going on in your head? Have you got loads and loads of things that have got to be done in lots of different areas of life? Just get it down on a piece of paper. A mindfulness practice, whether that's in nature, whatever you want it to be, breathing. Affirmations, digital detox is something that when I work with people, they often go on to do a digital detox, because quite often they say that they spend too much time on their phones. If they're business owners, they're on the phone every day, they're on the phone at weekends, and actually having one day a month or one day a week, your Sunday just not being on your phone, is a fantastic habit to start doing. So on to thinking about building your daily habits. So it's really easy for people to give you lots of ideas on what successful people do habit-wise and what you could do, but actually building the habits is the important part. Just like I said, when we have a goal, having the actions set out to reach that goal is really important. Otherwise, it's unlikely we're going to get there without knowing how we're going to do it. So there's another exercise on the next page about your new habit, but in the meantime, let's just go through some tips. So the first one, find someone to hold you accountable. If you have got a coach, a mentor, a partner, friend, colleague, tell someone that you're doing it, ask them to hold you accountable. Remember that starting small is actually far bigger than giving yourself that huge goal of saying, I'm going to start reading a book and I'm going to read a chapter every night. You know, if that's, you know what's realistic for you. Maybe that is, maybe that isn't. I absolutely love the I don't know if it's a quote, but it's a fact that I read. Rome wasn't built in a day, but they were laying bricks every hour. And I just love that. And it's such a good analogy of just the more you do something and build that consistency, the more likely you are to keep doing it. And actually, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day, but look what happened when they did lay bricks every hour. So perhaps it's a couple of pages. I know people that have a fantastic morning routine that just includes 2 pages of a book in the morning. They wake up, they do some breathing, they do some journaling, and they read a couple of pages of their book, and it's part of something else. Being specific. So as well, we could say in the summer, I'm going to start moving my body more. I'm going to start walking more. If we're not really specific about how that's going to happen, then it's unlikely to happen. So actually, when are you going to do it? How are you going to do it? Who's going to support? Do you need anyone to help you to do it? Get someone to hold you accountable. Actually make a plan of how you're going to do it, and make it time specific. So habit stacking, this is one of my faves, and I kind of mentioned this before without actually calling it that. So it's a great way to establish a habit, and it is attaching it to another one. You may have heard of it. It's quite a common term that's is sort of around now. So think about the transition points in your day. So if you go for a walk in the morning or whenever during the day, could you listen to a book on Audible? Could you listen to a podcast? Could you practice some gratitude? Could you be mindful? Could you go through some breathing, you know, listen to something and do some breathing techniques? If you make a coffee in the morning or you are boiling the kettle, could you do some stretches? There's an amazing book I'm going to recommend to you at the end of the session, and it's called Feel Better in 5. And he talks about doing 3 things 5 times a day. So actually you could, in 5 minutes that you're waiting for your tea to brew or your coffee or whatever it is, could you just stretch for 5 minutes? And I'm sure Alethea would agree with the benefits of even just doing downward dog, like, you know, in the morning, just doing some stretching, because that could be a time for some people when they're just on their phone. They're just scrolling their phone or doing something mindless. So habit stacking is so amazing and such an easy way to attach a new habit onto a current habit. So track your progress, again, really important. There's lots of journals you can get that have got habit trackers in. Write yourself one out, do one on Excel, put one in Word, whatever feels good for you. But just keep a record of that new habit. And also, so you can adapt. So you might look at it and go, yeah, I've done it. I set myself to do that 5 days a week. I've done it 5 days, or actually I've only done it 3. It's more realistic to only do it 3 days. I'm going to do it 3 days a week going forward. So just, it's not intended to make you feel bad. It's intended as a something you can use to kind of collect data, I guess. So be kind to yourself. Don't be tempted to do it all at once. One thing I see people often try and do is they'll have a session, a coaching session. We'll talk about some new habits or a goal, and they'll just want to go away and do it all, which is fantastic when you feel high energy and you feel excited to do something. But actually, if you go back to the point number 3, be specific. Are you likely to get all of that done? You know, you have time. I often work with people on the 30-day plan. I did it yesterday, and it's tempting for people to front load everything they want to do into the first month or couple of weeks, but think about the time that you have. Don't be tempted to do it all at once. Plan to do one thing really well. And number 7 is to reward yourself, which is a really nice one. It doesn't need to be monetary. I've got clients who have a list on their phone of rewards they're going to buy for themselves or do if they continue a particular habit. For some people, it's things like they're just going to take a half day off work to do something nice for themselves. It could be something they want to buy, but it's really important to reward yourself and recognise your success when it comes to a new habit. And be adaptable, which we're going to talk about after the next exercise, because life doesn't always go to plan. If you've worked through this and you've thought about what's realistic for you, and another really good one to think about on here, which isn't on here, is to perhaps think about what could stop you from doing that thing. So if it's, okay, I want to just switch my phone off at 9 and read a book for half an hour, what are the things that could stop you from doing that? It's a really important consideration, because again, if it's something that you look at that and go, well, actually, my child wakes up at 9 o'clock every night and it takes me 2 hours to get them back to sleep again, it's kind of like unlikely that you're going to be able to stick to that. So think about the things that could get in your way to make sure that when you're setting this framework up for your new habit, that it is kind of as watertight as it can be. So any questions, by the way, before we continue on to the new habit?
It's not really a question, but I am curious about number 6, don't be tempted to do it all at once.
Yeah.
I know that I have some things where I'm very good at this. So especially recently, I've been really good at getting my steps in. And in fact, if it gets to, after my little one's in bed, if my husband's home and I've not quite done as many steps as I want, I will just go out for a half-hour walk, even if it's 9:30. Obviously, it's summer, so that makes it easier. So some things I'm on top of, but then I know there's like a big list of things that I'm not, and that there are habits that I either want to bring into my life or get out, but I don't have capacity, I don't think, to do them. So it's good to have that reminder that it's okay to not do them all. But how do I get to those other ones when I'm trying to do the current ones?
Yeah, I hear you, and I think that's very common to have a big list of things that you want to do. Perhaps I'll use the example of the client I worked with this week then. So she, like I said, she'd had some fantastic habits, like a fantastic morning routine, but it had fallen by the wayside for a lot of personal reasons, and she wanted to get back to it. And actually, we talked about perhaps it wasn't time to get back to what she was doing before. It was time to change that up completely and do something slightly different. So while she was doing, 5 things in the morning before her 3 children woke up, it was impossible to do any of them. So we talked about, okay, maybe there's a different time in the day that you can start doing that thing that you enjoyed in the morning, perhaps the journaling that you like to do before 6 a.m. You just do it for 20 minutes in bed in the evening. And she was like, I'd never thought about doing it at that time. And actually, yeah, that could work. So I think for you, Alethea, where you're thinking about, your walkings, you've nailed the walking. Like that is something that, like you say, in the summer, it's easy to do. Perhaps it's, I don't know whether those habits, those things that you want to do are things that you've done in the past that you're kind of looking at and going, well, I can't fit them in the way that I used to, or maybe whether they're new things, I don't know.
Really, like an example is the tech. So like not wanting to be on my phone as much in the evening.
Yeah.
But then inevitably there's some stuff that needs doing, but I definitely get caught by like the doom scrolling and stuff. So I can't justify it with the fact that I'm being productive. Yeah, but I don't know when I would fit that other stuff in.
Sometimes it's as simple as saying, well, I know that that's going to happen. I know that life's going to happen. I know there'll be stuff to do, but I also know that there is going to be times when I'm doom scrolling and I'm going on there. It's a habit and I don't want to be there. So perhaps it's something where you start really small and say, okay, well, 3 nights in the week I'm going to commit, and maybe that's like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because it would be quite easy to switch off and work on those nights and go, okay, for those 3 nights I am not going to go on my phone past 9 o'clock. And obviously you could, if you've got an iPhone, you can put that limitation on whatever apps you want past a certain time, can't you? I've had that before and like quite obviously overridden it, but you can put that on there. Even I've had clients before who have not deleted, but how you can remove certain apps from your home screen, so you have to search for them to bring them back. Like that's a really great like circuit breaker when it comes to habits, because if you've got that app in a certain place on your phone and you pick it up and you know where it is, if you have to like pull that bit down at the top and search for it, it breaks that habit because you've got to do something different to get to it.
Yeah.
So perhaps it's, for you right now, it sounds like saying, I'm not going to be on my phone at all in the evenings. It's not realistic. It's not possible for you to do that right now because there's things that are going to come up. But it is possible potentially to say, there's going to be 2 or 3 nights in the week that I am going to commit to not being on my phone in the evening.
Yeah, like it.
Whatever nights work for you. And then, like I was saying, just leaping back to what that client did about, if there are things that you have done in the past that have worked really well, and you might be going, well, that did work really well, but actually it worked really well when my son was waking up at 7 in the morning, or it worked really well when my husband or wife was doing this and I had that time. You know, things change, so habits have to change and adapt as well. And quite often, like with that client this week, she kind of got to the point where she felt like, actually, I think this has happened as a reset for me to go, it's time to do this differently. Find another time to do it, find a different time in the day to do it, and actually you might find that it sticks even better. Okay, so your new habit, if you have one in mind, just a few steps to think about how to work through that. So obviously, like I said, we won't do it now. If you're watching on the replay, or Robert, if you go back and do this, just work through this with a pen and paper, just write the steps down. So what the new habit's going to be, why are you doing this? What's the motivation behind it? Because again, if you're doing it because someone said, oh, you should try doing that, or you're doing it because you feel like you should, the shoulds that are like all around us all the time, we're like, you should try that gym class, or you should try that juice cleanse, or you should. No, why are you doing this for yourself? What's the end goal actually going to be for you? Bring it to life. This is a part of a coaching model that we use called Grow. What's the end goal? And actually, when you do that and you bring it to life, it feels exciting. Because if you do that and you think, there's actually really no incentive for me to do this, it's not a habit that you want to start working on. It's not something you want to do. Move on to the next one. But there has to be something at the end of it that makes you go, yeah, it's going to make me feel better in the mornings if I'm not on my phone till late, or I'm going to do 10 minutes of yoga every day and I'm just going to feel less tight and, you know, hunched all the time. Whatever it is, think about what the goal is going to be for you and how you're going to feel as well. So how will you do it? Think about habit stacking. Think about those transition points in your day when you might have the time to slot something in. Like I just said, how's it going to make you feel? So important. Thinking about how's it going to make you feel in the moment? How's it going to make you feel short, long term? And then how you will reward yourself. So make a list of 5 rewards. And often people say they find this really, really difficult. It could be, if you like time on your own and don't get to spend time on your own, you're going to go out for a coffee on a Saturday morning and read your book in a coffee shop. You're going to go and do something that you've not done for a while, that's something you've just not had the opportunity to do. A client of mine just like desperately wanted to like go horse riding, and it was like a long held, like it was like a childhood hobby that she just had kids, and she's like, I just want to go horse riding again. So she had that was on her list of rewards. So it doesn't have to be monetary, it can be something completely free. But make a list of those rewards. That will keep you going when you're thinking about, you know, working on that habit and getting to where you want to be with it. Okay, a really important one, which we've touched on a bit already. When habits don't work because life happens, so we're all human, none of us are robots, we're not a machine. Quite often I'll establish something new and then my son will get sick or something will happen and it throws everything out, and I find that really hard because I'm like, I've just worked really hard on doing this, you know, I've been going to the gym 3 or 4 times a week, and then something will happen and it falls by the wayside, and it can feel really difficult to get back to doing that again. So the really important thing is to remember why you're doing it. First of all, to practice self-kindness, because like I said, we're human, you know, life doesn't go to plan. It might be that you need to adjust the approach. Look at the habit tracker that you made for yourself, look at it and go, actually, I've not been doing it 5 times a week, but I've been doing it 3 times a week. Actually, that's got to be my goal now. I'm going to do it 3 times a week because maybe 5 is unrealistic. So remember the vision, look back at your kind of your data points, your metrics, and think about whether you need to tweak it. Be patient, as we talked about on the science slide. It can take weeks or months for a habit to become something automatic. And a really important one, number 3, this is where self-compassion, no judgment and honesty is needed. If it keeps happening, ask yourself why. So it could be that you said, look, I'm going to get back to the gym, I'm going to do this, this and this, but actually it's not happening. Is there a block there? Is there a mindset block? Is there something around, actually, you don't deserve to be going to the gym 3 times a week because you've got to be doing this instead? You know, is there something that's niggling away at you, which actually you need to overcome that? I sometimes see with people in their businesses, it's They want to, they want their version of success, and it perhaps for one person it means going out there and marketing themselves at networking or on social media, and they're not doing it. So we come to a session and it's like, okay, well, you really need to be honest with yourself, like, why are you not doing it? Like, there's some procrastination here around not actually doing the thing that you want to do to get to where you want to be. And sometimes for people it's, I don't feel worthy of that success. And it goes so much deeper than just, oh, I didn't have time to do it today, or it just didn't work out for me time. It's like, that's an excuse that we tell ourselves. So actually, if it keeps happening, are there any mindset blocks that you need to overcome? Is there like a really deep reason why it's not happening? Or is it quite simply not the right thing for you to be working on right now? Is it one of those things that you've told yourself, or someone told you, yeah, you should try that, and actually it's just really not for you, and it's time to go, I tried that, it's not for me? And there's like no shame in that at all either. So be really aware of that. Is such an important one. And make sure you're setting yourself a reward to stay motivated. So when they don't work, make sure that you've got that in mind, and also that you've got a time frame for the habit, the new habit. You might go, okay, I'm going to practice yoga 5 minutes a day for the next month, and then I'm going to review it on the 29th of July. And I'm going to look back at my tracker and I'm going to see, and if I've done that 2 to 3 times a week, I'm going to get that reward and I'm going to do something nice for myself. So it has to be measured by time as well. Otherwise, you go on for months and months and you've not actually reviewed it. So I have got another quote here, which is actually just something I thought of about a month ago. I was on a business retreat and we were talking about things and habits and things that we were doing for ourselves, and there is a fine line between giving yourself what you need and making excuses. And it is so important. And it comes back to that mindset that I talked about. There'll be times when perhaps going to the gym might be in your new habit planned 3 times a week, but something's happened on Wednesday and you are drained, you are depleted. There's nothing in you left to push through. There's nothing left in the tank. You can't go to the gym. What you need is to stay home, spend time with friends or family, go to bed early, get some sleep. So it's about recognizing, having the self-awareness to go, that's what I needed. It doesn't affect my plan, doesn't make me a bad person, doesn't make me bad at setting new habits or sticking to things. I just had to do what I needed. But then also there is that fine line between giving yourself that and making an excuse. And I've been there, maybe you have been as well. I know I have been, when I've fallen off from doing something and I've just gone, oh no, I'll just go tomorrow. No, it's fine, I'll just go next week. And then before you know it, you're back in that place again of, oh, it's been a month before I did that thing. So this is all about, whilst it's about planning, being realistic, it's about self-awareness. It's about not judging yourself, but also being prepared to hold yourself accountable to what you want to do. So I've got a couple of books to recommend, which I already mentioned. So Atomic Habits by James Clear is absolutely amazing. If you haven't read it, it's super inspiring. And he has a really great way of just breaking things down and making it a lot easier to digest. I also really recommend his weekly newsletter, which comes out on a Thursday. It's called 321. And I think it's 3 ideas from him, 2 ideas from someone else, and a quote about something. And it's the best email that I get, because it's literally probably like a 5-minute read, if that. And it's really thought-provoking. I really love it. And the book Feel Better in 5 by Dr. Rangan Chatterjee. That book has been invaluable to me because, like I said, he talks about doing 3 things for 5 minutes a day. And he talks about, he's a doctor, so he talks about the benefits that he's seen in his surgery from people doing 3 things for 5 minutes a day. Literally, when someone's back is completely tense and just in pieces, 5 minutes of stretching once a day, and the benefit that that can have on us. So when you break it down like that, there's so much around us that we see about, do a 45-minute Joe Wicks workout or do something else or go for an hour run. Actually, if you did 1 thing for 5 minutes a day and did that for the next month, you're going to have a much better outcome than going for a run, like, sporadically, and doing that thing that perhaps you think you could be doing. And the last one is the High Performance Podcast, which is absolutely amazing. They have a different, maybe Alethea obviously knows it because she's nodding along. They talk about high performance, and they have lots of different guests on there, from sports people to various different people in the public eye, and they talk about what high performance means to them, and it's super interesting. So I really recommend that.
Yeah, big fan of that one. Damien Hughes actually did the keynote on the Working Well virtual conference in 2020.
Okay.
So that's how the Working Well community started, is Matt and I ran.
Wow, didn't know that.
Yeah, you'll have to have, the session is inside the community actually. I'll have to send you the link. But yeah, the podcast is amazing, isn't it?
It is. It's one that I often just have, like if I'm working, I'll just listen to it whilst I'm working. And it's a nice, I think it's not super deep. Do you know what I mean? Like it's really informative, but I sometimes find like the Stephen Bartlett one, I used to like, and I find that quite deep and you have to really focus, where I feel like the high performance, you do, but it's quite a nice one to just have on and like listen along and with some good nuggets of wisdom. So I really enjoy that. So any questions about what we've talked about?
Actually, I've got one. It's around probably goal setting. What's your thoughts about motivation? Because my issue is motivation, absolutely. Yeah. So I set off with great ideas, and then 2 or 3 weeks later, I think, God, this is hard work, and then I'll often replace it. So I give up for a while, and I restart. So it's kind of like getting on the ladder and getting off again. But you know, when you're setting goals that away from or motivates you. So if I've got like next example, I've got a few years ago I had high blood pressure, and I was setting targets. I want to reduce my blood pressure by 20 milligrams of mercury diastolic. Sounds very medical, but I just want to reduce my blood pressure, and it didn't really motivate me. But I thought it was, I want to feel better, feel fitter. I kind of changed the wording, and I wasn't quite sure what, from a coaching point of view, whether you should really go for away from motivation or positive towards motivation. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. That's an interesting one to unpick, actually, because obviously without knowing all the information, I'm guessing that perhaps you had some results, perhaps from the doctor, that, you know, they said,
yeah, that's right. That's right.
You should think about lowering your blood pressure. That can bring some feelings around, you know,
well, medical advice was, you know, Rob, if you don't do this, you know, within 5 years, you're high risk of 20% risk of a heart attack. So okay. all it was fear, really.
Fear.
And that didn't work for me as much as I had to rethink it. I don't know if you've come across that with people, particularly you've got targets thinking, if you don't do this, the consequences are negative, basically.
I can understand the fear base. Were there any feelings personally from you of how did I get to this point, or did you feel any shame, or did you feel bad at all about that you were in that position, or not at all?
No, it was basically, I was thinking that, well, that was a few years ago, so I changed. I tend to go towards more positive goals rather than fear ones. I just find them more motivated, but I don't know if that's right. You know, from your experience, do you find negative goal setting or positive goal setting works better, or does it depend on the person?
I don't think negative goal setting works, because you've also just mentioned for you personally that goal and that trying to form that new habit was purely based on fear.
That's right.
And fear isn't a particularly helpful feeling when it comes to trying to do something positive.
Yeah. So
I wonder if you actually reframe that, rather than looking at the facts, because you told me that, you know, this is the goal factually, right. This is where I'd like to be. Take that out of it. So you've got that, you know what that is. Take it out of it and focus on actually how you would feel.
Yes.
If you saw this through, and actually what the physical benefits would be to you of lowering your blood pressure. Yeah.
I mean, I found personally that it worked for me a bit better. I was just interested in how, you know, you come across that other people. That was all. But yeah, I agree with you completely.
I don't think coming at a new habit or a goal from a place of fear would work for many people. So I don't think you should feel like you're alone in that, because it's like I said at the very start, thinking about the language that we use puts us in a different mental state. When I work with clients who we work on money mindset, and they say, well, I need to be earning this money. Even just the way you say it can sound quite desperate, and it can sound negative, and it can sound scary. Whereas when you completely reframe that and go, I would like to continue bringing this money into my life or into my business, immediately that feels completely different. And you're coming at building your career or your business or whatever you're working on from a completely different place, because you're not going out there and looking for a new job or looking for a new business from a place of I need to do this, and this is scary and this is fearful. You're coming at it from a place of this would be great to do this, even if behind that there is the whole I've got to do this because I've got to pay bills, whatever. You're coming at it energetically from a place of I really want to do this, and it's going to be super helpful to bring this money back into my business. And the same for you, if you're coming at it from a place of oh, this is really scary and I've got to do this because if I don't, this is going to happen and that's going to happen, and it's just like super scary. If you come at it from a place of the benefit of this in time is going to be I'm going to feel like this. I don't know whether writing stuff down works for you or just whether you think about it and reflect on it, but actually what's the feeling, what are the health benefits, how's it going to change you, how are you going to feel better, is your outlook going to be different, is there going to be a sense of achievement from doing that? Perhaps flip the fear that you had felt into actually what are the positive feelings and the positive outcomes, and see if that can help you at all.
No, that's great. And I agree with it completely.
Okay,
thanks.
I'm glad that was helpful.
I had a couple of thoughts, so not really questions, but things that I thought it was worth saying for the benefit of the recording and people listening and things. One was I only have one child, so I've only got the experience of one, but I know with him, sometimes it's as quick as a couple of days to build a habit. And I think that probably is generally young children, because I know that with sleep training, people achieve like quite significant things just in a couple of days. So when we talk about the time frames of how long it takes to form habits, and I think it depends what it is, who you are, how frequently you're doing it. But that was interesting, like 19 to 200 and something days. Whereas actually maybe there's something in like our age or how much time we spent going against the habit or not doing it that changes it, because it's phenomenal what can be achieved in 2 days with a child, both positively and negatively. Like he had ice creams after nursery for about 3 days a few weeks ago when it was really hot, and he literally still thinks that that's what happens, and I'm like, no, that was like a one-off, like that was because it was hot that week. And then the other thing is also a sort of family children related thing, but it's interesting, and it's just back to Steve Jobs wearing the same thing every day. We've been struggling to kind of like work out what the family food eating routine is, and there's a family of 4 children opposite us, and I asked her what she does, and she was like, oh, I just cook the same thing every week. I mean, they've got 4 children, but they always have pizza on a Friday, they always have a curry on a Tuesday, and I don't think we quite need to get into that. But I did say to my husband, maybe we could remove some of the stress of what are we eating this week by just, as long as he gets nutrition, it's fine. Like, let's just make it a bit more routine. And actually, we've sort of done that on just a couple of nights a week, and it does help. Because I think habits and this lifestyle stuff, especially when you're parenting young children, all becomes way more needed. And I mean, it's useful for everyone, but certainly there's parents out there of young children that just like are struggling, right? And some of this could really help a lot.
Yeah, I really agree with that, and thank you for those reflections. As a parent of a young child as well, I can really relate to all of that, and it makes you realize that's why people get like Gusto and HelloFresh boxes, isn't it? Because same as Steve Jobs, it takes away the decision fatigue. And I think when you've got a family, even if you haven't, I think sometimes it's even worse as a single person thinking about what to eat. What am I going to have? I always have to do a meal plan every week, because otherwise, not to have the same things necessarily, but otherwise I'm like, I go to the shop and I'm like, what am I going to buy? What am I going to eat? I waste food. So that's another one where it takes a bit of work to plan it out, but it does reduce that decision fatigue day to day of opening the fridge and going, what am I going to have tonight? And having kids and having to think, what are they going to eat tonight? And I think your point about young children, about habits sticking a lot quicker for them, I wonder if it's because they have, like you say, far less going on in their lives, and actually it's us who are reinforcing that habit to them. So whereas as adults, we're accountable to ourselves, and you can go, I'm not going to go on my phone past 9. Oops, I'm just going to override everything on my phone. I'm just going to be on my phone till 12. There's no one saying to you, you can't do that. You're not going to have an ice cream today. We're going to have dinner tonight. So obviously, I think it's a lot easier for them in that respect, because we're there to enforce the habit. Whereas as an adult, you have to find someone to hold you accountable or hold yourself to account, and it's a lot easier to make those excuses.
Yeah, I love the do it differently message as well. Like, if one way of trying to do that habit isn't working, try and do it in a different way. And again, that's, I'm thinking about the family parenting context, but like those 5 minutes of movement, I get them in whilst my kid's watching like his after school telly. He's not going to do that. He's not going to not do that. Rather than just sitting there still on the couch with him, like I just sit on the floor, and we sometimes get him on the floor as well, and we do some stretches. Which isn't how I exercised for the 36 years before he was here. But it's what works right now. So
yeah, that is such a really valuable message, actually. And he talks about that in Feel Better in 5. He talks about one of the things you can do for movement is like put music on and dance with your kids at home.
Yeah,
dance with your partner. Just do, like you were saying, that's not how you exercised for all that time before you had him, but now that's your moment to do it, and that works for you.
Yeah, the steps still count. Your body's not
exactly
like duty, just because I didn't go in the gym. My body doesn't mind.
Yeah, so the doing it differently is so valuable, and there could be one way that works. I feel really passionate about that, especially after that session with the client where she had that breakthrough of thinking, actually, I could pick apart those 5 habits. I could probably still do them in the day and just find different times to do them. That's like a real good light bulb moment. So I'm glad it was helpful.
Yeah, that was really great. Thank you.
Okay.
How
All
do
right.
we
We'll
get in
just,
touch with you?
yes, so I'll just share there that if you are watching the replay, or Robert would love you to connect with me, let me know what you thought about the session outside of it if you'd like to. You can follow me connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram. You can obviously email me, and I'm always open for corporate workshops or one-to-one coaching. I've done this a couple of times now, and I love this habit session because it always gives people these light bulb moments, and I always see people kind of like writing some notes and thinking about how they could do things differently, because it is really about starting small. It doesn't have to be a huge change, and I think when you let people know that and they go, I haven't got to do all these 5 things at 4 a.m. and I haven't got to have this huge goal, actually it can just be something really small. So yes, I really enjoyed doing it, so thank you for taking the time to come today.
Amazing, loved it, Lucy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
for joining us, Robert. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Have a good
All
afternoon.
right, take care.
Bye.
Bye bye now.